Call the Willmar City Council meeting to order for Monday, November 4th. Roll call.
Mayor Calvin. Councilmember Fagerly.
Here.
Maskey.
Here.
Schwantes.
Here.
Davis.
Here.
Alvarado.
Here.
Osmus.
Here.
Plowman.
Here.
Nelson.
Here.
9 present, 0 absent.
Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Council have any proposed additions or deletions to the agenda? I have one item. Councilmember Meske.
I'd like to add a 14.C city administrator search update.
Okay, anything else? Seeing and hearing none, I would like to receive an update from Mr. Aaron Backman from Kennewick County and City of Willmar Economic Development in regards to a great news we received on a deed grant that we had applied for a bit back. And we will put that right after item number 10 and right before the Public Works Safety meeting, if that's okay, Councilmember Plowman?
Certainly.
So with those two amendments, I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
So moved. Second.
Motion been made and seconded to approve the agenda as presented. Discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I'm sorry,
I want to pull,
that would be under consent.
Oh.
All those in favor of the motion for the agenda as presented signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, that motion does carry. Next consent items, entertain Ms. Thompson.
On tonight's consent agenda, we have for council's approval the City Council minutes of October 21st, Willmar Municipal Utilities Board minutes of October 28th, Caris Health Rice Memorial Hospital Board minutes of March 6th, June 5th, and September 4th, Planning Commission minutes of October 16th, a resolution designating a new polling location for Ward 1, Precinct 1, Accounts Payable Report October 16th through the 30th. For council's acceptance, the Parks and Recreation Board minutes of October 23rd, Board of Zoning Appeals minutes of September 10th, and the Willmar Lakes Area CVB Board meeting minutes of September 17th.
Move to approve.
second.
Motion made and seconded to approve the consent items. Councilmember Davis.
Okay. I would like to pull the resolution designating a new polling location for Ward 1.
So Councilmember Davis is pulling item number E, letter E. Any other items? With the exception of item number E, is there a motion to, there's been a motion made and seconded. All in favor of passing everything except item number E, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, that motion carries. Next, Councilmember Davis.
I pulled it because I didn't know why this is in the middle of the consent items when we need to make a motion on it.
Generally, our policy is that we want to move those items that take a resolution onto the regular agenda item. I believe that's what you're referencing. And so from now on, we'll just have staff make sure that if there's a resolution, we move that to a regular agenda item or place it under a committee. I believe that that's the request. Is that correct? Councilmember Meske.
Just because it is, I understand the procedure, but also I think it would be important if you are in Ward 1, Precinct 1, to perhaps let's share where that new polling location is for those folks that might be watching.
So the new polling location, Councilmember Davis, you want to handle that?
Whose item is this?
City Clerk, Ms. Thompson.
With the anticipation of the Willmar Community Center possibly being under construction, which that is our current polling place for Ward 1, Precinct 1, I approached the National Guard Armory and asked if they would be interested in being a polling location for our 2020 elections, because we do have 3 elections next year. And they were receptive, so that is why we are making the change. If this is approved this evening, then I will forward this to our county auditor's office. They'll send it to the Secretary of State, and they will notify all voting members in Ward 1, Precinct 1.
Thank you.
Right, thank you.
Okay, so it's moving from our current community center location to the Armory. Additional discussion. Okay, Councilmember Davis, would you like to entertain that, or enter that resolution?
Sure, I'll make a motion to approve the resolution to move the polling place.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded to approve a resolution designating new polling location for Ward 1, Precinct 1. Additional conversation. Roll call.
Councilmember Fagerly,
Aye.
Maskey,
Aye.
Schwantes.
Aye.
Davis.
Aye.
Alvarado.
Aye.
Osmus.
Aye.
Plowman.
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye.
8 ayes, 0 nays.
That resolution passes. Next, we have the introduction of a new employee, Dr. Ramstead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members. It's my pleasure to introduce and welcome Lynn Scholdes. Oh, you came up to the podium. And Lynn joined the city on Monday, October 21st, as our new permit tech employee. Her experience spans residential property tax assessments for Candiota County to 911 dispatch. Because of her experience and self-initiative, she has blended in and taken hold of her position very quickly, and we're very glad to have her on board. Lynn?
Thank you very much. It's great to be here.
Great. Lynn, I remember you as a 911 dispatcher, of course, and the great work that you did there and how you've moved your career forward and working in the assessing office and now coming back to work for the city. So really excited to have you on board. So we're glad you're with us. So,
Thank you. It's great to be here. Thanks so much.
Welcome.
Welcome.
okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we'll have a, you're certainly welcome to stick around as long as you wish, or you can leave whenever you want this too. So this could, there could be fireworks at some point, and you never know. I mean, this is a council meeting, so things can happen. So anyhow, no, I'm just, I'm being a little facetious there. So we're glad you're with us. Next, I'll open the public hearing to consider an ordinance to amend electric and water rates charged by Willmar Municipal Utilities. Mr. John Herron, our utilities general manager.
Good evening,
Got your
Mayor.
name wrong on
Council.
Friday and almost got your position wrong today. So,
It works. Anyway, before you tonight is a resolution to amend the rates charged by the Willmar Municipal Utilities for both electric and water. The commission hired Dave Berg Consulting to do a rate study this past year. And the study is looking out 4 years, so 20, 21, 22, 23, and 24. The study identified a need to adjust our water rates and make some minor modifications to our electric rate ordinance. The electric rate ordinance, the changes that are being proposed there consists of two. Under section 1 of the ordinance, our off-peak storage heat is one of those areas. The rate remains the same at 5.66 cents. However, we are going to be adding electric vehicle charging stations to that rate. So those individuals that want to own an electric vehicle, if they want to take advantage of a lower rate, an off-peak rate, they will be able to do that. And as of a week ago, in our 56201 zip code, we presently have 8 100% electric vehicle cars in our zip code. So electric vehicles are on their way. So we're trying to prepare for that and give them, our customers, an option to charge at a reduced rate. The other change on the electric side is our energy acquisition adjustment. And we changed that, or we're proposing to change that to a formula-based. Basically, our rate consultant set for those 4 years the base rate of our power supply costs and transmission, and it will be looked at each year, and therefore we're proposing to change that to a formula versus a fixed number in the ordinance. So those are the two changes on our electric. On the water, however, a little bit different story. Our water, we have 4 years. The first year is proposed for a 20% increase to our rates. And the first 20% is to cover the water main costs that the Utility Commission and City Council has agreed to transfer over to the utilities. It consists of water main replacement costs will become the responsibility of the utilities starting in 2021. And the patching of streets for water main breaks will become the utilities' responsibility in 2020, next year. Then we move on to the next year. That's also being proposed at 20%. As we've talked about over the last 2 years, we have major improvements to our water treatment plants. We have 2 water treatment plants here in Willmar. And in order to maintain the reliability and the quality of water that we have become to expect, we need to do some work to our treatment plants. They're coming at a cost of about $20 million each. And that does not address the salty chlorides yet, which we're hoping that EPA backs off on some of those standards and MPCA. But so we need a 20% rate increase the following year for that. And the 2 last years is basically COLA adjustments, cost of infrastructure, cost improvements of 5% each. So when we look at rates, our rates on the residential side, and bear with me, we refer to it as averages, and nobody's average. Everybody's above or below averages. But when you look at averages for residential, right now the average residential bill is at $19, and by 2023 we'd be looking at $30, so an $11 increase over 4 years. And commercial, presently we're sitting at 55, would go up to 87. And then industry, we got multiple classes of industrial customers there, but percentage-wise, they would see the same rate increase. Also, I believe in your packet, when we attended the Finance Committee, they asked how do we compare to other communities, and I believe in your packets you have a graph depicting that. On our residential side, we are 6th from the lowest presently. And when we look at our commercial side, we are actually the lowest in that rate study. And the rate study includes a number of communities our size, larger, a lot of regional centers. So our rates as we speak today are very respective. With that said, I'll open it up for questions. I also have additional information on the dollars that between the city has spent and the utility has spent in the last 3-4 years. If you care for me to share some of that information.
Yeah, go ahead and share that information now if you would, please.
Yeah. Some history. When we looked at it, we spent a lot of time looking at where costs are at, some of the history. City staff, I want to thank and commend city staff for working with the utility, Sean and his crew, and pulling numbers together. When we look at 2018, between the dollars that the city had spent and the dollars that the utility spent, we're looking at $571,000 total. When we looked at 2019, again, between the city and the utility, we were looking at $761,000. And estimated for 2020, when we look at the Y project included in those numbers, we're looking at just shy of $900,000 is the estimate there. So that 20% is going to generate about $600,000. When we were attending the Finance Committee, I know the Finance Committee had asked, will that be enough to keep up with water main replacement? And based on replacement, using a 100-year replacement average, we should be close based on today's dollars, but a lot will depend on how aggressive the city, the aggressive role the city takes in street replacement for the streets that need to be replaced. I believe there's some discussion that we need to more timely address some of the streets, and our water lines are directly impacted with street projects. So hopefully when I look at the dollars and the costs and cost averaging, that we're relatively close to where we need to be if these rates are approved. So,
Okay. This is a public hearing. Are there any members of the public that wish to speak? If you are going to speak, please come up and state whether you would reside in the city, but state your name and address for the record, please.
thank you.
You're going to stick around for a question.
Yep.
Anybody from the public that wishes to speak?
I have some questions, but it's not directly related to the rates increase. I have some questions.
Go ahead, you can go ahead and address the
Can I
questions.
address-
Yep.
My name is David Keller. I live on First Street. My question is, you just mentioned that you're going to lower the rates for electric car charging. You're going to tap my billfold to help them out. Isn't that what you just said?
No, what they're doing is the electric car rates will be charged at a night rate, so they'll only be able to charge at night, and that's when the cost of the utility is
Okay,
less than it is.
then I understand.
So it actually would reduce, in theory, reduce your cost because there'd be additional revenue coming in for that.
Okay, I understand that then. Great. Here is something that I directly cannot find in my house.
John, if you could share with us what he's asking.
It's the sewer meter charge. I moved here in March. I have not found my sewer meter. I'm being charged $28 a month, as everybody in the city, I believe, is being charged. I can't find a meter to be charged for.
No, it goes off of your water service. So there's not a meter that goes out for
It
the,
says meter service charge. Either you're misleading the public or something is wrong here. You're tapping a service fee. You're charging me $28 a month. For what? You're charging your sewer on the amount of water that's used, which I moved in, I put a lot of plants and flowers in. I got charged for sewer because it's based on the amount of water that's used. So if it's based on the amount of water you're using, why is there a meter service charge?
I'm going to go to staff for an answer here, and I'm not sure what direction you want me to go, Mr. Administrator. But I believe that that's a pass-through cost. I believe that that is not a direct cost from the utilities. Is that correct, Mr. Herron?
I guess, Mayor, I'll yield that question to Mr. Grammons or to Mr. Olkins there on when the rate studies were completed, what costs were included in the meter service charges as being referred to.
Mr. Mayor and City Council members, having been here this short period of time, I don't know that I've actually even seen a utility bill from the city of Willmar. But it is true that your sewer is usually calculated off your water usage. Now, whether they use a terminology, that is something that you would prefer, we still need to capture that amount of money, whether it's on flowage or whatever it might be based on. But our city engineer is present tonight, and it's if he has any specific information of why the wording is the way it is. The city doesn't print the bill, but I'm sure the bill was prepared at both the utilities and the city's request on what wording we want to have on there. But it may just be a misidentification because there is no meter for
It's
sewer.
not a misidentification because it's in black and white. It's been here since March, since I've been here. So it's not a miscommunication, it's miswording. You're deceiving us what it's used for. And you should have seen an electric bill by now, utility bill by now, if you're the boss. You should know what the bill looks like.
No, the administrator would not see the bill. The administrator is not a resident of the city, so he
I
would not have seen
understand that, sir, but he should have at least looked at what a bill looks like,
Yeah.
that most of us get.
Yeah, this is the
Right.
first time it's come up. But Sean, do you have anything you want to add to that?
You're making money on my watering my flowers. You're charging me for sewer for one thing.
That's a,
Charging me for something I'm not using.
that's a base rate that's been on the bill for years and years. It used to be called just fixed rate. And then we had residents approach the council, approach the MUC on changing the terminology at that time because they didn't like the name fixed rate or base rate. And so we tried at the time, that was a couple of years ago, they tried to change the terminology so that it made more sense. It's a base rate for sewer usage based on your water usage, which you're exactly right. If you're watering flowers and watering lawn, you're paying for more sewer than your water usage. But
3 times more on sewer than what it
that's
costs for the water.
that's the way the rate studies are set up.
Yeah, the way the rate study is set up is if you're watering your yard and if you're watering your flowers during the summer, it goes off an average of what you use in the winter. And so that is how that's figured. So, so there's a formula that's put in place, and if you look at the municipal utilities policy on how they charge that water fee, it's defined in their policy on how they do that. And I believe it's somebody help me here, but is
I
it
used to be
3
on the
months or the
city
4 months?
council in Litchfield, also was on the utility board in Litchfield. And what they did there is during the non-watering phase in the year, you kind of established an average. And then come summertime, if you exceeded that average, they only used that average
Right,
because they knew you were using it for watering.
correct,
So you didn't have to overpay on your sewer.
right, right, right.
Yeah, that's-
That's correct, that's what how I was trying to explain it, but you may be explaining
That
it a little
doesn't
better than I
explain
can.
a water service, a meter service charge.
I
That's a
will,
deception to the public of what that rate is.
I will have our staff
Nodded
take a
your
look.
head, yes, you agree.
We'll have staff take a look at it, and if we need to change the verbiage of that, we'll do that. Because I believe we just did it with a council action last time. So, and it's right, we did do that a couple of years ago, like, thank you. Any other questions?
No.
Thank you. Any other members of the public that wish to speak or have questions? Seeing and hearing none, I'll close the public hearing and move it to the council. Council, what are your wishes?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve the amend the electric and water rates charged by the Willmar Municipal Utilities. Discussion. Councilmember Osmus.
Thank you. I received some questions from some citizens thinking that 20% was a big jump and for 2 years and wondering why there was a 50% increase then over the next couple of years. And I understand to replace the transfer of the costs from the city to the utilities. So then their question was, then something should lower then on the city side if somebody else is going to be collecting that money. And if there's a way that we could explain that, that makes sense. And then if you didn't do it, if we didn't raise it, what would happen? Why? I just want to make sure that they totally understand the necessity of the increase and why it's 20, 5 and 5.
Very good question, Councilmember Osmus. Commission, they do not take raising rates lightly. We look at all possibilities and look at what we can do to streamline our operation and control costs. That's our first form of managing costs. Your first question on the 20% under rate increase, I believe there's internal discussions going on among city council and staff with the transfer over to the utility and the fees that the city collected or had been using in the past, reallocation of those funds, whatever they may include. I guess I'm not aware of where those discussions are at, so I apologize, I can't answer that question because from the utilities perspective, we're not involved in that discussion, so I don't know. On that, your second part of that question, that second 20% rate increase, what would happen if we didn't receive that increase? That increase, when we're looking at our our water treatment plant costs. We already pushed that project back. We pushed it back twofold. One is because we need a rate increase in order to address those improvements. And two, because of EPA and PCA regulations, waiting to see where they go. And there's a third factor in there as well. We had looked at our system this summer to see what we had left for capacity in addition to the water quality that we're providing to the city. Based on the growth factor of the community, we have enough capacity for about 3 years based on what we know today. And that's not including any wet industry. So if a wet industry were to come into town, we would have to move this project forward immediately. So based on what we know today, it's basically residential and commercial, and we have enough capacity for the projections that are there for about 3 years. So if we don't approve the rate increase, we would have to go back and probably look at our alternatives or options, which would be very limited. So, does that answer your question?
Kind of.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh,
So
that's some more.
what I had proposed in the budget was to take the $400,000 that's collected and use that on the streets. So I think that might be the follow-up question that you need. probably to decide
Yes.
that. Yep,
Yep, that's kind of what I was looking for,
right, yep.
is that people weren't getting double taxed. And of course, what we always hear is that people want roads,
Right.
the roads taken care of.
If I can-
And as much as I can appreciate that we're low, I mean, that was the other thing that I wanted people to understand, is that we really have lower rates compared to every other city our size. And that's all good and fine, and I can see where also a taxpayer is thinking, well, then why can't we stay there? And I just want to make sure that they understand that there's a need for this. And like you said, we don't do this lightly.
Right.
And that it had to be this amount. So to the other question then I got asked is, if we were the lowest, because I was trying to explain that, yes, we have very low rates, have we not been charging enough then? And are we playing catch-up now?
Yes and no.
Okay.
It's, first I'll comment on the mayor's comment to the reallocation. What the city used for replacement of water mains, that $4 that's on the utility bill, that $4 has not been adjusted since, I believe, 2008. Sound right? Somewhere in there. So yes, to answer your question, to some degree, we're playing catch up. So, the community, if you want to call it, enjoying that benefit of not having that rate increase since 2008, somewhere in there. The downside to that is we got to catch up. And when the council and the commission sat down and worked through an MOU, an agreement, basically, a memorandum of understanding on how we're going to move forward, the commission acknowledged that water main replacement should be a water cost, as the council, requested the commission to consider, and the commission took on that responsibility of covering those costs within our fund. So in order to do that, we need, that type of rate increase. As I indicated earlier, the 20%, that generates about $600,000 a year. And to recap what is being spent a year, 18, 571, 19, 761, 2020, 895,000. So what we're looking at for rate adjustments is at best covering the cost. So, and for Council Member Osman, our rates, yes, we have that increase. are going to go up, are going to remain the status of being the sixth lowest and the lowest. Possibly not, but we're not going to go up a lot. The situation that we have here in Willmar is very similar to most communities. The infrastructure is aging, infrastructure needs to be replaced, and that's the cost that's coming with it. With that said, to support that, this study just came out here this last week. And in this study, they got the recap on here, and it talks about water main failures. Water main's approximately 50 years old. Break rates have increased 27% in the last 6 years, and this study is for the entire United States and Canada, so it covers a huge footprint. It also talks about the national rate of pipe replacement is at 125 years. That's why we're seeing these costs go up, because the pipe has exceeded its life expectancy. That's why the breaks are increasing. That's why the cost for replacement, costs for water main breaks, all continue to exponentially go up. So we're not alone in there. By the study here, it's a common challenge across the entire United States. So as we talk about our rates going up, I would venture to guess that when we look at where our position is in 4 years, we're still going to be relatively close to the bottom end.
Okay, Mr. Gramitz.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor and council members, I know that this is an issue that we'll be discussing at the Finance Committee, and we'll be getting, much more in depth on that $4 and what does it cover as far as the wastewater aspect, of the street reconstructs. So there'll be more discussion on this and more specific detail. But as Mr. Heron is aware, when you're in the hole replacing the water, you really should replace the sewer at the same time, because you're putting a nice blacktop street on top. So you'll notice in some years, we've got a report that the city engineer's office put together. Some years we'll do $100,000 in water main and $100,000 in sewer main. Just a couple of years ago, we did $400,000 in water and $400,000 in sewer. So it depends on the streets that are chosen to be reconstructed as to how much money we need on a yearly basis. But on average, it is my expectation that the $4 being charged right now, which amounts for about $400,000 a year, is in essence is going to cover the sanitary sewer part of these projects. And what the utilities are doing are recognizing that the water has to come up with the matching amount to replace the water main. And then, of course, then the city, looks at the street, the curb and gutter and stormwater and all the other infrastructure above that. So it's an effort to get the amount of money needed for all of those things to occur at the same time, because it makes no sense for the water utility to go in and just replace the water main, replace the blacktop on that section, then the city to come back in 5 years later, replace the sewer main, replace the blacktop, and then 10 years later say, oh, the blacktop is all messed up, we might as well replace all the blacktop. We want to do it in a coordinated manner so we make the most effective and efficient use of public dollars, whether they come from taxes or from the utility bill. And how this all goes together is worked out between the utilities and the city engineer, and they calculate out what the costs are. And there's going to be some years, that the water utility may spend more than the $600,000 that they've collecting, and there'll be a few years they collect less than what they collected. So it's an average, and so there'll be years where we do a lot more and years we do a lot less, but we still need the money to operate.
Okay. Councilmember Fagerly, followed by Meskey, followed by Plowman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. John, you said 600,000, that's what this increase?
20%, correct, is roughly 600,000.
Okay. Now, I think the last time you had a rate increase, people started conserving more water.
Yeah.
So what's going to happen this time?
I would anticipate there will be some additional conservation simply between individuals conserving water And as we continue to go forward, appliances are becoming more efficient. So it's something we're going to have to continue to monitor.
Okay. And then, are you saving any money by not having the downtown hot water heat? Because I know you let some employees go.
We, district heat, that's a very good question, Council Member Fagerly. The district heat is tied into our electric rates. So when we're talking about no rate increases on our electric rates during this study period, that has to do with how we're changing our business model. And as I indicated earlier, we always look at how we can provide services more efficiently and save costs. On the electric side, that's exactly what we're doing. Our district heat is tied to electric. Steam is a byproduct of generation at the plant. The plant was costing us 15 cents a kilowatt to produce. Our average retail rate in the community is 10 cents. So the plant was costing us 5 cents more than what we're selling power for. We had to make roughly $1 million investment in our district heat system. That would have, if I recall correctly, would have roughly doubled the rates for our district heat customers. When we did outreach to our district heat customers, they said, don't make the investment. We will transition to our own heating system. So the savings on the district heat is directly tied into our electric.
Okay. And you have to remember, the county has a 0.5-cent sales tax. That's going to go on for another 2 years, probably 3.
Yeah.
City just put one in 10 years. We're looking at a CenterPoint Energy franchise fee. It's going to be additional costs there. So 20% seems high.
It is. Nobody's going to debate that with you. It's high. 20% is a large increase. And 20%, when we talk dollars, the dollar increase we're talking is not, in relation to a percentage, is not a lot that we're talking in dollars. We're talking, $2, $2.50 is what we're talking for an increase on an average residential customer. But when you start talking 20%, that catches people's attention. 20% is huge. So percentage basis, it's huge. Dollar-wise, I'm not trying to understate the value of a dollar, because a dollar is a dollar. But, we're looking at a little over $2 a year, $2.50 a year.
And you would think with all the new residential homes that are being built, I bet you there's been 50 or 60 already this year, a new apartment complex, a convenience store with a car wash. You think some of that would offset?
You would think. When our sales, and the community has had very nice growth over the last 10 years, our water sales are remaining flat. So conservation and energy efficient appliances are offsetting growth.
So you want to sell more water then? Then you should lower the price. That's what you do in private business.
I don't think that's what he said.
And comment well received, but when you look at, we have the lowest rates in the state or next thing to it, and we're not selling enough water, what else can we do? We're open to suggestions, because we're always.
Got to pay for it.
Yeah, we're always looking for ways to provide a service, more reasonably. But thank you.
Councilmember Metzke.
First of all,
I'm sorry, were you done?
Yeah, I'm done.
Councilmember Plowman. Councilmember Metzke, followed by Plowman.
First of all, John, thanks for presenting and staying for some questions this evening. I will tell you, as your liaison to the Municipal Utilities Commission, that they do take this very seriously and have had it on their agenda for many months to talk about it. And I appreciate the dilemma that you are in. However, it's very clear that some of that responsibility does come back to the city for shifting the costs of these things to the utility. So I understand that you're in a dilemma. I'll be very interested. I know people have alluded to the $4 piece. That's got to be very clearly delineated, because I I would echo what Councilman Rasmus was talking about of if you're going to shift the costs from the city over to utilities, which you're going to be in the hole on that deal too, but at least it's moving. The savings that is happening on the city side, that's precisely where we can adjust that. But whatever comes out of that $4, and this is not a question for you, this is sort of a looking into the future. That $4 has to be clearly defined, because even as I sat here today, I've already heard a reference to water mains, to sewer mains, to roads. It has to be very clear what that's going to be used for, because it seems like maybe some people already have an idea that we'll just use those extra dollars to do some of those pieces, but that's something that people are going to want to chime in on. The public needs to know where that money is going to go. And if it's going to go to roads, maybe that would be something the public says, yeah, we really want to advance that roads issue. But that fee sits out there sort of in limbo, and we have to address that quite seriously. And I'm going to be very interested in how that plays out. I don't think you have any other choice but to raise these rates this way. The question will be, what will the city do with its rates in response? Because I've said this before, it's coming out of the same pocket. The taxpayer pays this, whether it's to the city or to the utilities. So they're going to continue to pay that. But again, if it's going to increase because we don't diminish it, what are they going to be paying for? And that's a question, I think, for the city to deal with. I think from the utilities, you're doing what you have to do to cover your costs. And so I applaud your efforts. I know it's been very difficult. And again, I thank you for standing for questions this evening.
Councilmember Plowman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Mr. Herron, for being here tonight. And I'll also second that. After sitting on Utilities Commission meetings, I appreciate the time of the commission and all the employees at the MUC, because I know they take the very most minute numbers and data very, very seriously, and a lot of time is spent in coming up with this information, and especially regarding rate increase. I think it's a discussion that's often had, and something that I need to remind myself of, but I think it's also good for us to all remind ourselves of. We often question the role of government and whatnot, but especially at a municipal level, when it really gets broken down, the very basics of what municipalities provide are the core things, and that's things like sanitary, sewer, water delivery, electricity. And I think that it's easy for us to look at something like a rate increase with negativity, but we would be much more negative about the subject if the quality was not there, or if the quality were to diminish or to go away. We take for granted the fact that when we go to our faucets, when we go to run our washing machines, when we go to wash our dishes, that the water is there, it's available, we have good pressure, it's clean, and it's treated, and it's safe. And so I appreciate that. And so that'll lead me into the question after I made my little preachy statement there. I know we're not talking so much wastewater, but has the discussion been had on the utilities end regarding pretreatment and the investments that we're making on the water treatment side and the water delivery side, how that may affect in the future the chloride discharge issue that's coming down the road, because they are somewhat symbiotic. One does affect the other. In other words, the quality of the water that's coming out of the wells and being distributed amongst the community does have something to do with the quality of the water being fed then to the wastewater treatment plant. And if those conversations have taken place, what's the conclusion?
Okay. Councilman Plowman, excellent question. Probably the last 2 years, there has been in-depth discussions between the utilities and city staff regarding the chloride issue that the city is facing. Both the city's engineer and utilities engineer have also been involved in those discussions. And we've, I believe, explored every potential option that there is out there at this point in time to address chlorides. Now, there's a possibility, and Sean, jump in here if I'm misspeaking, but there is a possibility that the chloride standards may be relaxed. I don't know that. I think Sean maybe has more current data on that. But we have worked very closely on, do we treat the water on the front end on a water treatment plant side so people gain the benefit of that dollar spent for water treatment versus treating the wastewater discharge before it hits the receiving stream. We've looked at those costs. We looked at treating the wastewater discharge before it enters the receiving stream to the levels or to the reduced levels of chloride that we need to meet the discharge standards, as well as looking at the treatment plant on the front end so that people can enjoy the benefit of the dollars paid for the treatment. On the front end, the dollars as we speak today, $90 million. That's what we're looking at. $90 million to meet the chloride standards. So the city, in their last MPDS permit renewal, they were able to achieve a variance to meeting those standards. And we have, 15 years to go, 14, 15 years to go yet on that variance? Somewhere in that vicinity. So that's part of the reason that we tabled addressing the chloride standards. Once we've completed all our research, and in that research, like I said, we looked at treating the wastewater discharge. We looked at water treatment plant improvements to soften water. We looked at high efficiency softeners for every home in the community and a few other options as well. And in the end, we went to PFA for PFA funding to see if they would help, because maximum funding through the PFA loans, which is tied to the wastewater side for wastewater treatment improvement. But if we did it on the water on the front end, they would pull our application in and consider it. But in the end, either we had to 100% comply or we would not receive any dollars. So that's part of the reason why we pushed that water treatment plant, or some of the reasons why we pushed our water treatment plant improvements back, because we were looking at, we referred to it as a stepwise approach. If you heard that terminology over the last 2 years, we're looking at, as we did improvements to the plant, start working towards a water softening treatment plant so that when the day came, we could incorporate it into our plant without spending additional dollars to tie it in. So that whole chloride standards is just a wait and see. The city is on, like I said, you roughly have 15 years left in the variance. I believe 10 years from now, 5 years before the variance expires, I don't know the details, but I believe that the variance is written as such that if we are not moving towards meeting the chloride standards, that we need to move into water treatment plant so that when the 20 years are up, we are meeting those standards. Whether we address it at the wastewater treatment plant on the discharge, or whether it's addressed on the front end on the water treatment end of it. So that's all fairly close, Sean?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, yeah, thanks. I think, I guess I would echo that sentiment that water pre-treatment and your assessment's exactly on point. At least with that, the consumers get the benefit. I mean, they're paying for it, but they also get the benefit of better quality water. And I know, however, the cost being exceedingly high, there's certain communities that were able to do it. Hutchinson, for example, but that was only because they had a very large industrial user that was able to help them along with that RO system. And so in certain cities, municipalities, that may not be the case, but I appreciate the efforts and the time that's been taken for all of this. Thank you.
Councilmember Alvarado.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You talked about break rates, and you were saying that the current age of these pipes are getting up to 150 years old, or?
Councilmember Alvarado. No, good question. What I was referring to in the study, they're saying the average pipe age in the United States and Canada is 125 years old.
Okay. What's the longevity if we go with obviously the newer piping that we're going to be installing? What does the consumer gain by doing that? And is it a forward-thinking sort of thing where it's providing for, let's say, our children in the fact that they may not have to upgrade as frequently, or what's your thoughts on that, please?
That's a very good question, Councilmember Alvarado. I believe the pipe that you're referring to is PVC, or the plastic pipe that you see. Yeah, that's becoming an industry standard. Item number 10 in the study also talks about it. Talks about PVC pipe has the overall lowest failure rate. So I think the city's been using all PVC for a number of years already. Yeah, John's shaking his head, yes. So a number of years in street projects, we've been utilizing PVC. And based on the data that's out there on PVC pipe, that is a correct assumption that you have. PVC pipe does last longer. Here in Willmar, we have a fair amount of corrosive soils, and a lot of our pipe that we're replacing is just ate up by the acid in the soils. So, we're not getting 125 years out of our pipes here in Willmar because of the corrosive soil. And our pipe that we have in the ground today that's being replaced is ductile iron pipe mainly. So.
Okay, I was going to ask another question about that, but give me a second, I'll come back to me.
Okay. Additional comments or questions from the council?
Otherwise, Mayor, I have two comments yet if the questions are complete. I'd like to comment a little bit because we keep talking about what does it cost to replace. Right now, if we take our miles of line that we have in town based on today's replacement costs of $80 a foot, which is fairly conservative, and if we only replace our lines every 100 years, today's cost is $654,000 a year. And the other comment that I wanted to make to the gentleman that talked about his wastewater charges, that he's paying wastewater for watering his flowers. That would be an incorrect statement, and I would like to clarify that for the public. We look at, for wastewater charges are based on the winter 4 months water consumption. So the average of those 4 months is what the customer gets billed for the rest of the summer as a maximum. So they get billed actual water consumed for their wastewater rates, not to exceed their winter 4-year average. So customers are not paying for wastewater for their flower watering.
Councilmember Alvarado.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Do you have a ratio over a 10-year period, let's say, on the break rate between the new pipe versus the old pipe? Do you have is it 2 to 1? Is it 3 to 7? Or I don't know. Do you have any idea of a ratio of quality of new to old?
No, I do not have that ratio. However, I don't believe since I've been here we fixed the PVC break yet.
And how long have you been here?
6 years.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Meske.
John, I did think of a question for you. You gave totals of water main replacement for 18, 19, and projected 20. Do you have that broken out by what the city's paying versus utilities on those water mains?
2018, the city paid $471,000, some odd change. The utility spent another slightly over $100,000. In 19, this year, I don't know if these numbers are finalized, but I'm sure they're close. City spent $427,753, and the utility spent another $335,000.
Thank you.
Additional questions? These are all good questions.
Mr. Mayor, I wanted to respond, I think, to Councilman Meske's earlier question or comment regarding the, let's say, the transfer of the cost over to utilities. And from the I guess, if you just look at what we're currently doing here and looking into the future, you'd probably say that, that's what it looks like. But the fact remains is, I don't know the exact year and I don't know the exact number, but approximately 6 to 8 years ago, the accounting world knows about GASB and what that stands for, I think Government Accounting Standardization Board, okay? And they came out with a report. And every year, your auditor has looked at the city's books and said, the city spent so much money, let's say $400,000, on water mains, and they transferred that value over to the utilities. It's as simple as that. Because that GASB 51 or 52 said the correct accounting house should carry those financial figures. And so when the city's putting in like a brand new street and it constructs a water main and a sewer and the street, it takes the value of that street and sorts it out and puts the water over in the utilities. So truthfully, GASB 8 years ago said, this is how we're going to account for things. And 8 years later, I'm just saying, we're at the point where we're separating those things out so that the right entity is paying for the things that are found within their accounting books. So it's not a pushing off nearly so much as a requirement of GASB to account for who is responsible for that asset. And so Willmar is right at the point now where we're saying, actually in 2021, we're saying we're online now. We've separated it out. So it's other cities probably maybe have done it earlier, but it's taken this long for Willmar to sort that out. And it's a good thing because then the utilities know what their assets are and they know what they're responsible for. And the city also knows that same information. So you may not maybe remember 8 years ago and GASB 51 or 52, but this is the result of that.
And we talked about that a little bit in the MOA. It's in that MOA that was developed that this utility will recognize water main replacement in our depreciation schedule for GASB requirements.
And just, if I said anything disparaging that we were forcing that upon you, it is the reality. I understand that that's the shift. My concern is of when we shift those dollars, what's the accounting of what the city's actually paying for? And that's where it's out of your hands and it's in ours to deal with. And so I appreciate the comment. But I understand we're not pushing it off, but it is putting it where it needs to be. But there's a value associated with that. And the value savings on our end by having it transfer to the rightful entity is something we have to discuss. And so I'm looking forward to having that discussion.
Additional discussion before we're ready to vote. Okay, on this, there will be 2 votes. There will be one for the motion that's currently on the table, and then the follow-up motion would be to publish the ordinance in summary, and again, that takes 6 votes. So at this point, we're voting on the motion to amend the electric and water rates charged by municipal utilities. Roll call.
Councilmember Meske.
Aye.
Schwantes.
Aye.
Davis.
Aye.
Alvarado.
Aye.
Osmus.
Aye.
Plowman.
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye.
Fagerly.
Aye.
8 ayes, 0 nays.
That resolution passes. Next, I'd ask for the council to entertain a publish the ordinance by summary motion. And again, this would take 6 affirmative votes to pass.
So moved.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded to publish the ordinance by summary. Discussion. Councilmember Maskey.
I know you have broken record on these, but that does mean that, of course, those will still be posted online and available at City Hall if one would like to see the whole copy.
Correct. Additional comments or questions? Roll call.
Councilmember Schwantes.
Aye.
Davis.
Aye.
Alvarado.
Aye.
Osmus.
Aye.
Plowman.
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye.
Fagerly.
Aye.
Maskey.
Aye.
8 ayes, 0 nays.
That resolution passes as well.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. As I stated earlier, the commission does not take raising rates lightly, and we'll continue to do what we can to manage costs and find ways to hopefully increase sales. So, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for your work. Appreciate it. Next, we have an update on a deed grant that we applied for with some favorable news from Mr. Backman, our Economic and Development Commission Executive Director for the City of Candioi County. Mr. Backman.
Yes, good evening. Aaron Backman with the EDC. 11 years ago, a small biotech company just outside the city limits with less than 10 employees asked for city sewer service. It didn't happen. It was costly. It was perhaps a bridge too far. We now have it in our grasp to do so today, to provide sewer service to a growing company that now employs 65 people in Willmar. The parent company plans to accelerate Epitopic's growth in animal vaccines and is prepared to invest over $15 million in Willmar in capital investment and add 17 well-paying biotech jobs here. However, they cannot make that investment if there's inadequate sewer service to the site. Based upon Bolton and Mank calculations, the estimated costs for extending city water and sewer service to Epitopic's production facility on 45th Street is approximately $2.2 million, $1.3 million for the sewer line, and the rest for the water main. On September 25th, the EDC submitted a grant application requesting $1.1 million in funding from the innovative BDPI program with DEED. And this was for both utilities that were split between the state of Minnesota, city of Willmar, and Epitopics. Subsequently, the DEED program manager indicated that he wanted a revised grant application reflecting a state grant paying for solely the sanitary sewer. On October 3rd, we submitted this application, and the revised innovative BDPI grant application requested $1.3 million in funding for just the sanitary sewer. A week and a half ago, the EDC received word from the DEED Commissioner, Steve Grove, that he had approved the BDPI grant with the City of Willmar for the Epitopic sewer extension for the full $1.3 million. That's good. As I talked to Steve Okens, our finance director, he was particularly enamored with page 35 of this grant application that referenced 0 matching dollars required for the project. That doesn't happen too often. The city staff, city attorney, and the EDC are now reviewing the draft grant agreement, and I have been able to have several of our questions answered. Number one, does the final legal description of the sewer line need to be added to Exhibit A before the grant agreement is signed? The answer is no, it does not. Number two, can the portion of the sewer project crossing the railroad property be excluded from the state bond finance property? That's a requirement. The answer is DEED has a real property declaration waiver request, and I've given a copy to our attorney. And that can be submitted to the capital bonding coordinator at the MMB offices in St. Paul. Number three, does the city have flexibility in adjusting the path of the sewer line? And all before you should have 2 diagrams. The one with the black intermittent line is showing the sanitary sewer line, where it would start at Epitopics in the upper left-hand corner, go south on 45th, and then make a 90-degree turn, go east on the north side of the new Highway 12, and then intercept with the main interceptor, the north-south main sewer main. The second page there refers to the water main, and that would be on 1st, going west, and then north on 45th. The grant refers to just the sewer project at this point. And I should add that the match is not dependent on the city water project. The match is the investment that the company would make into this project. So obviously the state of Minnesota wants to see that investment happen and those jobs created. So in answer to that question of is there flexibility in adjusting the path of the sewer line, per the program manager, we do have flexibility in making changes. So if we wanted to adjust, be on that north side of, or get it closer and be in the right of way of MnDOT, we can do so. And in answer to that question, can we place the sewer line in the right-of-way of MnDOT? The answer is that as long as the city can show that it has an easement from MnDOT, DEED is cool with that. They're fine with that. Do future businesses that tap into the sewer line need to be innovative? Epitopics is clearly innovative, and Select Genetics would likely meet that definition if they tap in. However, I'm still seeking clarification on that question. So, good news is that we have a commitment for $1.3 million.
The council, this is great news. Does council have any questions? Councilmember Schwantes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As the chair for the Joint Powers Board, I just want to thank Mr. Backman and the staff. This is an issue that the company has been trying to resolve for over a decade, well over a decade. And I just applaud you for thinking outside the box. The work and effort that's been put into it has been exemplary. And I just say kudos to you and your staff all the way around. Thank you very much.
Very good. Thank you.
Additional comments or questions? Councilmember Meske.
Same here. Awesome. Your second point, you talked about the attorney sending something. What's the likelihood of that passing through as in reference to the Y property?
Well, as Robert Scott can attest to, the individual there looks at things very closely. You've had an opportunity to work with him before.
Mayor, council members, you may recall one of the issues we had to address to be ready for the city to move forward to close on the conveyance of the property it's conveying to BNSF for BNSF's rail corridor was at the rail corridor across the city's interceptor sewer line, carrying the entirety of the wastewater from the city's collection system to the treatment plant. That was very difficult to unravel. The whole sewer corridor had also been constructed with bond funds and was subject to the bond declaration. When I looked at the grant application and saw that a similar declaration would be required here, I had several questions. But fortunately, the answer I think today is there does seem to be a process on the front end to exempt the rail corridor from the bond declaration. So we will follow that and be optimistic that we will avoid those kinds of issues.
Perfect. Applaud. This is the kind of growth that we need. So thank you again.
Councilmember Plowman, followed by Councilmember Alvarado.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Backman, for being here and for your efforts regarding this. With regards to timeline and the realignment of Highway 12, how do they mesh or not mesh?
Well, Mr. Mayor and members of the council, we are working with staff to try to work through that process. It doesn't happen overnight in terms of getting the permits, getting the survey work done. The draft grant agreement actually goes till December 31st of 2022. However, obviously, we don't want to wait till the very end because work is proceeding now on Highway 12. So when I've had discussions, for example, with Bolton and Menk, they're saying, 2020 is a good time frame to try to move forward with this process. So it'll take some time to do the permits and other things, but I think if we can funnel it through at that time, I think that would be great.
All right, thank you.
Councilmember Alvarado.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Bachman, I'm very excited about this. I think that the new jobs for the community is awesome. We want the professional jobs. This is a great dovetail into what we're doing as a city with our loss program and upgrading things. So thank you for your work. Thank you for your team's work. Thanks to the EDC chairman for encouraging this kind of thing. So I'm very excited about that. Thank you.
Okay. Additional comments or questions? Aaron, thank you for the work. And I know there's a lot of work ahead of us, and there's been a lot of kudos already, and I'll just add on to them and keep on doing a good job. We really do appreciate it. So thank you very much.
Thank you. It is a team effort.
Exactly. Next, we have Public Works Safety Committee report. Councilmember Plowman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Public Works Safety Committee convened on Wednesday, October 23rd at 5:15 at the City Office Building. Myself, as well as council members Osmus, Nelson, and Alvarado were there, along with our Public Works Director, Mr. Christensen, our Park and Rec Director, Mr. Baumgarn, and our City Clerk, Ms. Thompson. We called the meeting to order. Nobody was available for public comment. We did briefly discuss public safety numbers and statistics, and we were reminded that we had decided earlier on in the year rather, to try get those numbers and statistics once monthly as opposed to every single meeting. So that was the reason that we didn't have them available, and I anticipate that to come through the next committee meeting. So our first agenda item was regarding the consideration of an amendment to Chapter 3, Alcoholic Beverages, Section 3-137, Brewer Tap Room License, and adopt a new resolution 3-138, Brew Pub Licenses. A little bit of history on this item. In 2013, the city adopted an ordinance allowing brewer taproom licenses. Due to amendments to the state statute authorizing taproom licenses since that time, we're asking for a new ordinance to be updated and amended accordingly. The city has received a request to create a new category of liquor licenses to accommodate the unique retailing venue of brew pubs, and that differs from taprooms in the city, under authority recently granted by a new state statute. So after discussion regarding the ins and outs of that process, a motion was made and seconded, amending Chapter 3, Alcoholic Beverages, Article 3, Section 3-137, Brewer Taproom Licenses, and adopting a new Section 3-138, Brew Pub License, and setting a public hearing for November 18th, 2019 at 7:01, and I will enter that motion now.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to set a public hearing for November 18th at 7:01 PM to talk about the tap rooms and brew pubs. Discussion. Councilmember Davis.
Silly question, what's the difference between a brew pub and a tap room?
Councilmember Metzke. I'm Councilmember Plowman.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. For that, I'm going to defer to our city clerk, as she has a much better understanding of this than the rest of us, because it was a little bit vague.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, brew pub differences from a tap room because they serve at their brew pub and they have a restaurant, which is involved. So that's basically the difference.
And if I can follow that with one more question, we also did discuss there was another item, and I can't recall specifically what was said regarding the dispensing of other alcoholic beverages as still not being allowed. It has to be alcoholic beverages that are produced on site. Is that correct?
On a brew pub, they can get a full on-sale license or a wine and strong beer license, where a tap room just serves their product only.
Okay, additional comments? All in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, that motion does carry. Councilmember Plowman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Second action that we're going to take that was requested would be to entertain a motion to publish the ordinance by summary. And this is basically just a procedural step that helps us with the efficiency of the whole mechanism. I would entertain that motion.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to publish the ordinance by summary. Councilmember Metzke.
That will be available online and also at City Hall for people to take a look at.
Absolutely, it will.
Thank you.
Additional comments? Again, this takes 6 affirmative votes, and so we are going to publish the ordinance by summary if this motion passes. Roll call.
Councilmember Davis.
Aye.
Alvarado.
Aye.
Osmus.
Aye.
Plowman.
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye.
Fagerly.
Aye.
Maskey.
Aye.
Schwantes.
Aye.
8 ayes, 0 nays.
And that resolution passes. Councilmember Plowman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The next item is a exciting item to discuss as we start to get into further discussion regarding our local option sales tax projects. And this item is regarding the Invest in Willmar and the award for construction manager at risk. the background of which the city of Willmar passed a half-cent local option sales tax in the fall of 2018. Staff and the Invest in Willmar board agreed to hire a construction manager at risk to oversee the projects as defined by the board as recreation fields, event center, civic center at the civic center location, and Swanson Fields. Proposals were submitted to local firms, with 2 firms responding as in wish to take part. The selection committee reviewed the proposals and presented their recommendation to the Invest in Willmar board on October 9th. The board endorsed the selection committee's recommendation of Marcus Construction and is recommending their proposal for construction manager at risk be approved. It was reviewed by the Willmar Park and Recreational Board and also agreed upon. And at our committee, a motion was made and seconded to enter into a contract with Marcus Construction as the construction manager at risk for the Invest in Willmar projects, including recreational fields, the event center, civic center location, and Swanson Fields. And I'll enter that motion now.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to enter into contract with Marcus Construction as the construction manager at risk for the Invest in Willmar projects with a local option sales tax. Discussion. Councilmember Plowman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I should actually go back just for good full disclosure for the public and for good public record and just go over the financial impact regarding this. And I noticed that was at the bottom of our sheet, but the recreational fields estimated at value of about roughly $6 million. The event center at the Civic Center location, $10 million, and the Swanson Fields at $2 million. The projects will be funded by 2 $15 million bonds, and the bid award is $1,646,630, and that is what we are voting on tonight.
Okay, additional discussion. I see Marcus Construction is represented by Mr. Jim Bach. Are there any comments that you wish to make at this point, or I guess there are. Mr. Bach.
Thank you. Jim Bach, Marcus Construction. Mr. Mayor and Council, thank you very much. We're honored and really excited to get to work on these very, very important projects. Big thanks to Brian and his staff, Sean and his group, and Rob and all the committees that have participated in this process. It's been, it's going to be great, but it's been a lot of hard work for them, and they're ready to get going. So we're excited about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Additional comments? Roll call.
Councilmember Halbert.
Hold on a minute. Councilmember Meske.
I was just going to ask, on the project management piece, it has, I'm just trying to put out a calendar of exciting things. It has 22 months. What's the planning and how long will this project take when we're doing this? Because I mean, I'm seeing like there's an asterisk and a little explanation of that.
Yeah, the city administrator has presented to the Invest in Willmar Steering Committee a timeline that was developed with Rob, Steve, and Sean working collaboratively with that. And I believe that this all falls within those parameters. And so I know at one time we talked about including that, but we should probably just include that in maybe an update when we send that out so everybody has that.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor and City Council members, we can send that out. It's always subject to change as we get into the process. But I think from the very beginning, it was my understanding that everybody knew all of these projects weren't going to happen on day one, and that some were going to be delayed. So even though Swanson Field may be done in one summer or one construction timeline, that some of the other projects may bleed into the following year. So we put out, a timeline. So the event center, recreation center is delayed in its initial construction, but it needs to be coordinated with the design because it's with the rec field and the civic center all tied together. So some things will happen at the same time, but actual construction might be delayed. So that's why the timeline is a little bit longer. It's just not 1 year. It's going to be spread out over, 2, maybe 2+, depending on how it works out. And then, obviously, the community center is, has its own timeline tied to City Hall, and the stormwater has its own timeline tied to when we get to those projects and when we schedule them in. And Robbins Island, I believe, we entered into the engineering design, I think, at the last council meeting to get that initiated. So everything is moving forward. It's just every project has its own timeline.
Yeah, the Robbins Island piece is scheduled for August 15th of next year. And the only reason I know that is Judy gave it to me to sign today, or Janelle, one of the two did. So I just read it this morning, so.
I just think that the people are going to be very excited about it. And now we have someone in place that updates on how that calendar is going to look, because you're going to have a lot of people that are paying and they want to see what's going on and are excited about it. It'd be nice to be able to share some more details as that comes around. So
Perfect. Sounds good. Okay, sounds great. Roll call.
Councilmember Alvarado.
Aye.
Osmus.
Aye.
Plowman.
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye.
Fagerly.
Aye.
Maskey.
Aye.
Schwantes.
Aye.
Davis.
Aye.
8 ayes, 0 nays.
And that resolution passes. The other thing that I want to compliment you, Councilmember Plowman, on is that you're calling it local option sales tax. And I've requested that many times to have us spell that out because of the negative connotation. And so even though it's in our minutes as lost, I appreciate you saying the whole thing. And I know any correspondence that I've ever done in regards to it, it says local option sales tax. So thank you for doing that. I appreciate that. Councilmember Plowman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and duly noted on that point. The next agenda item that we had was to accept project number 1801-A and authorize final payment to the contractor, Dunnick, Inc. 1801-A was the reconstruction of 9th Street and Park Avenue Northwest that was awarded back in 2018. The project included a gravel base, bituminous, curb and gutter, new water main, as well as PVC and sanitary sewer as well. Final quantities have all been reviewed, and we're ready to go ahead and sign off. The total project cost was $1,312,124.25, with $1,254,973.04 paid to date. The final payment of $57,151.21 will be to Dunnick Incorporated, and we'll close out this project, and I will enter that motion now.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded to approve final payment, the amount of $57,151.21 to Dunnick, Inc. Discussion. Roll call.
Councilmember Osmus.
Aye.
Plowman.
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye.
Fagerly.
Aye.
Maskey.
Aye.
Schwantes.
Aye.
Davis.
Aye.
Alvarado.
Aye.
8 ayes, 0 nays.
That resolution passes. Councilmember Plowman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That completed the action items portion of our last meeting. So then we kind of went on to some informational items. The next item for discussion was the Swanson Field lighting. And what I'm actually going to do, if it's all right, that I may actually defer to our Park and Rec Director, Mr. Baumgarten, regarding the specifics of this. We discussed the fields and the lighting scenario that exists on the blue and the orange fields, and the potential to either change or slightly amend or whatnot the order of which things are done, and just exactly how that's going to be done within the CIP. And so if the details of that discussion could maybe just be gone over a little bit for the council, I think that would be just a little bit helpful to get us all up to speed as to where the discussion stands.
And is this money that's in the 2019 budget, or is this the 2020 budget?
I believe that'll be covered when we talk to John. I believe it's 2020.
Mayor and members of the council, if I may, Rob had prior engagements that night, so I was the one filling in for him. But yeah, basically, it'll be in the 2020 budget, or CIP actually. What the discussion centered around was allowing the committee, the council, the group the option of lights at a field on Swanson for baseball purposes. Is kind of what we centered everything around, rather than defining exactly which field it is at this point. So we centered the conversation around that, And that's kind of the way we left it at the committee level.
I'm confused, but that's all right.
I guess from my perspective, and other committee members can chime in if they have better understanding, but I believe it was always discussed that we had it nailed down as to which lights were going to be replaced. And I believe, and I want to make sure that I got the correct field names, and correct, please somebody jump in here if I'm wrong, because I don't want to sound like an idiot, but wouldn't be the first time. I believe that in the past, we had been discussing that it would be orange field, that the lights were going to be completely replaced. And I believe that after discussion and looking into the lights and the various costs and not only the light fixtures themselves, but the bases and the poles and whatnot, and also the upcoming potential changes that may be taking place at the Swanson Field complex. Discussion is still going on at the Park and Rec level, along with the Public Works level, regarding which order in which fields will be receiving which lights when, and whether or not it will be a retrofit or whether or not they will be brand new lights. And so as of right now, and that's, I guess, why it was a discussion item, is because that is still being discussed and there's not a formal plan adopted. And we are still in the budgeting process for 2020.
Right, and I guess my confusion is in that, I mean, if it hasn't been approved in the budgeting process, then it would fall under finance for, for adopting the CIP and the budget. So I understand it's good for background information, is what I'm gathering.
And I think the main reason that it was brought for discussion was for specificity, so that we could, during our discussions regarding the budget and dollars for the budget, that we can be specific and that we can be intentional with our verbiage during those budgetary discussions, so that we have the correct project funded the correct way, if that makes sense. And we were discussing kind of some different ideas going back and forth, and your point again, totally right on that. Since we have not finalized any of those budget items yet, I believe the intent was to get out ahead of that and make sure that when we were discussing those as budget items, we were discussing them correctly, knowing exactly what was going to happen, instead of thinking that there may be a change, and just trying to keep it more clear from the very beginning.
Sure. Mr. Gramitz.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor and City Council members, just for clarification, this request is coming from the Invest in Willmar and the Swanson Field Subcommittee. Park and Rec didn't wake up one morning and say, hey, let's shift this around. This is being driven by the group. They're saying, if we're going to, when we upgrade Swanson Field with the local option sales tax monies, in our budget, we have proposed for Orange Field, the lights be replaced. Some people on their committees are looking at the better ways to utilize their funds to maximize the quality of the fields. And so then they started talking about orange and blue. And so that then has progressed through Park and Rec into Public Works and through the staff. So this is an issue, I think, that it really needs to come with some clarity from the Invest in Willmar main committee, and say, what do you want that to look like with your local option sales tax? Because I was under the impression when I first got here, Orange was the field, and we were going to do all this work to Orange, and it was going to be our second premier field. But I think what's happened is that some of the members of the Swanson Field Committee are looking at the water main that's going through the outfield, and saying, we stick all this money into Orange and rearrange everything. And as Mr. Or John, when John was here earlier, he's sitting there talking about removing the the salts, the sodium from our water, what's that going to do to the piping and the treatment plant, and where's it all going to go? I think there was a concern on people that were putting all their money into Orange. Were saying, well, maybe Orange is going to get ripped up at some point in time with new water main and, things outside of their control. So maybe we should look at this differently. So that's where it started, and it's perked up to the committees and Park and Rec, and because it was tied to the mayor's proposed budget, that's the link now. So they're having their discussion on their project, but it's linked to the lights, and it's kind of like, if the budget capital improvement plan can't be adjusted, it has to be Orange. They want to know that so they can then make their decisions. And so it's in that vein that this is being put on the table to discuss. They want clarity, is there flexibility? And then they will in turn clarify their position on blue and orange fields, and then come back through the normal process for the final project. And that design work, is expected to happen this winter. So, January, February, March. So they need to know how our budget is going to impact that particular project. And it'll go through the process, I'm sure. The mayor's correct. At this point, the finance has got the budget, and they're going to be holding a finance meeting this Thursday. All the council members are invited to attend, and it'll be, an issue to discuss. How is the city going to handle that?
Yeah, I guess all I'll say is that when the budget was presented to me, it was presented that that's what they wanted. I mean, I have, you and I talked about this last week, Mr. Grammons. It doesn't make any difference to me what we do. Maybe this is a lesson to ourselves of, let's not paint ourselves in a pigeonhole and, say that, this and this. Let's just talk more complexes, kind of like, Mr. Brizendine was talking about the regional parks and, the Swanson Field Regional Park and the Robbins Island Regional Park. Maybe if we talk about those generically, then at that point, then they can start funding things based off of that versus, we can be specific in the budget when it's approved, but when we're talking concept, maybe if we keep it more global, it might be better for everybody involved. So, but I haven't been involved in any of those discussions. So, Mr. Gravis told me about the conversation with the internal group. So it's nice to have that update. So, go ahead.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I would echo that. I wish I had been able to explain it that charismatically the first time around, but no, and it's not lost on us the urgency with regards to the budget and the fact that we do need to get these items finalized and delineated before finalizing our budget so that the proper language is in there so that the local option sales tax, the Invest in Willmar groups, the various subcommittees and whatnot can go ahead and do their work. And so I anticipate we'll be taking care of this. We'll probably be discussing it both Wednesday and Thursday this week. So with that, our final item of discussion was regarding the 2020 street improvements budget. And this was an informational item, but it's obviously something that is all on all of our minds. We all know and understand the situation that we have in Willmar and regarding our streets. And I should say, it's not just in Willmar, it's all over the state of Minnesota and the upper Midwest. And the fact that a lot of it has to do with the fact that we've had some rough climates the last couple winters, especially last winter was very wet, very cold. It really tore up our roads, and cities, municipalities, counties, entire states are struggling to keep up with their roads and funding mechanisms. And so that is the ongoing topic of conversation is where are we at? What is going to be our priority list in terms of roads, streets in the city? What tools can we use? What financial tools can we use? And this is somewhere where the two departments, Public Works and Finance, kind of have to work back and forth just a little bit in coming up with for lack of a better term, creativity, because I think that's what it's going to take, because we're seeing that the cost of road building and infrastructural improvements is rising faster than our ability to gather revenue for those infrastructural necessities. With that, we discussed what staff is doing internally in terms of looking out and not just looking at what we're doing right now, but looking out, say, with a 5-year plan. And we just took a look at some preliminary plans for what might be possible in the next 1 to 5 years regarding major street projects. And I appreciate the hard work that's going on in the engineering department within our city offices. And that is something that's a discussion that's also going to continue at the Public Works Committee level and also at the Finance Committee level. And I did look at the agenda, and I failed to recall if it's on this week's agenda, but we always seem to hit on roads with each committee meeting that we go to. So with that, that was the end of our discussion. We were there discussing items until 7:47 p.m. So it was a good meeting, and we did learn a lot. But with that, I will make a motion to file the minutes.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to file the minutes of the community or Public Works, Public Safety discussion. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, that motion does carry. Next, we have the Finance Committee report of October 24th. Councilmember Nelson.
Thank you, Mayor Calvin. Finance Committee met at 5:15 on Thursday, October 24th at the City Office Building. Present were Council Members Nelson, Plowman, Alvarado, and Osmus. Also present was Finance Director Steve Okens and City Clerk Judy Thompson. After we called the meeting to order, there were no public comments, and our first item of action was regarding tax forfeited parcel valuation. And at the previous Finance Council meeting, members were informed that 3 parcels, all of which were vacant lots, had been forfeited to the state of Minnesota for non-payment of property taxes. As such, Candioi County has valued those parcels at $300, $100, and $200, respectively, and there were no special assessments owing on those parcels. At the Finance meeting, it was the consensus of the committee to send this matter back to Public Works Director Sean Christensen prior to authorizing the county to sell these parcels to provide further clarification on why the city would not benefit from owning them, particularly because of their location and stormwater issues. At the last council meeting, action was taken to direct the city to purchase parcel number 95-913-1115, which was considered to be beneficial to the city to own because of stormwater drainage. The cost to the city is the established value of the parcel of $200,000 plus filing fees. Staff recommended that the remaining 2 parcels, parcel number 95668-1700 and 95668-4900, should be put up for sale at the public auction at the county auditor's office. A memo from Public Works Director Sean Christensen stated that there was no benefit to the city to own these 2 parcels. It was moved in a second to approve the county valuations for said tax forfeited parcels and approve parcels number 95-668-1700 and 95-668-4940 for public auction, and I will enter that motion now.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to recommend that the 2 parcels be listed for public auction via the Candioi County Auditor's Office. Discussion. Roll call. I'm sorry. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, that motion does carry. Councilmember Nelson.
Thank you. There's also a reminder to all council members to please stop and see Ms. Thompson after the meeting, as we all do need to sign that authorization. With that, our next item was Senior Citizens Assessment Deferment. The Willmar Municipal Code, Chapter 5, Article 5, Special Assessments, and the city's comprehensive assessment policy offer the option to defer special assessments to senior citizens, disabled or active military deferments meeting certain income guidelines. This year, the 2019 street and other improvements received 4 qualifying applications. Staff is recommending that these applications for deferment be approved. It was moved and seconded to approve the resolution approving the deferment of the 2019 special assessments for the 4 properties totaling $27,940.35, and I will enter that resolution now.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve the deferment of 2019 special assessments following the guidelines as established by the council. Discussion. Roll call.
Councilmember Plowman,
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye.
Fagerly,
Aye.
Metzke,
Aye.
Schwantes.
Aye.
Davis,
Aye.
Alvarado,
Aye.
Osmus.
Aye.
8 ayes, 0 nays.
That resolution passes. Councilmember Nelson.
Thank you. Our next item was a resolution to certify unpaid utility charges. And annually, the municipal utilities, Willmar Municipal Utilities provides a list of unpaid utility bills to the city for certification to the county auditor per section 16-127 of the Willmar City Code, which states that such unpaid utility bills represent a lien on the real property receiving utility services. Further, the Willmar Municipal Utilities has offered the owner the right to request an appearance before the commission to make objections to payment. After holding the meeting, Willmar Municipal Utilities adopted Resolution Number 37 on September 23, 2019, requesting that the Willmar City Clerk certify the unpaid utility charges as a lien on the real property. The Finance Committee was presented with this year's list of 13 parcels totaling $6,078.90. It was moved and seconded to introduce a resolution certifying the municipal utilities list of unpaid utility charges totaling $6,078.90 as presented to Candioi County for collection with the 2020 real estate taxes. And I will enter that resolution now.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to certify the municipal utilities list of unpaid utility charges. Discussion. Roll call.
Councilmember Nelson.
Aye.
Fagerly,
Aye.
Metzke,
Aye.
Schwantes.
Aye.
Davis.
Aye.
Alvarado.
Aye.
Osmus.
Aye.
Plowman.
Aye.
8 ayes, 0 nays.
That resolution passes. Councilmember Nelson.
Thank you. The rest of the meeting were discussion items. The September 30th, 2019 financial report was presented to the committee. The status of various capital improvement expenditures were discussed, and I am actually going to call on Mr. Okens to review that financial statement at this time.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, included in your packet was the monthly financial report as of September 30th, 2019. As Councilman Nelson mentioned, the committee reviewed this report, and on the second page of the report after the cover page lists our major projects that we are involved in 2019. The City Hall project was a carryover from 2018 actually, and that's the preliminary costs that we've had primarily just to do the architectural study as far as the space needs. That project is in discussion and will be moved forward as that committee works together with the community center and comes together with a final recommendation for the council. The second item there, the refrigeration system at the Civic Center, the R22 replacement is nearing completion. November is usually a month where a lot of projects will be wrapping up for the year if they're not totally completed, and whatever's left will be carried over. But these major projects, as well as the upcoming capital improvement projects, we've requested from all the departments a status update so that the Finance Committee can also review any excess dollars possible for the 2020 budget or other projects that are financing. And a number of the items that we'll be looking at in the report may be a timing issue. Again, one has to remember that these numbers are as of the end of September, so bills as they come in our process may be in process and aren't included in the totals. The third item there, the airport and taxi lane rehabilitation. I recall Eric Runnigan was here, and that grant has been received from the federal and state, but the project actually construction won't happen until next year due to the timing and the weather coming in. And the final two listed there, the amphitheater dollars were reallocated for the Robbins Island Four Seasons Shelter, and that includes legacy dollars as well. The next page is a list of primarily wastewater capital projects. A lot of lift station work there, and they are again completing. We're evaluating. It shows that they came in slightly over. We meet again with the departments to evaluate are all the costs that have been submitted coded appropriately, and if so, the reasons why maybe some of these projects are over, and so we'll have those explanations going forward as well. And again, timing on this is through the end of September. The other items there are listed under operating and projects for the waste treatment plant. Again, the Eagle Lake Sewer District improvements of $200,000 was an item that, again, the agreement for taking over Eagle Lake happened in the beginning of the year. So again, we will be checking with the departments on the status of why, if they have not been started, or if they have, where are we at in the projects. The vehicle replacement you'll see there again are primarily timing issues. I know that some of these items have been ordered. I believe the squad cars have been ordered and are waiting for invoicing, or the invoices came in October, again, as I mentioned before. The mowers of the Public Works, again, council has taken action to reallocate some of those dollars because they came in lower, and the council action authorizing the budgetary changes would be a timing issue as well, and those will be amended as those are recorded. The next list starts the capital improvement on all the other projects. And again, as I've mentioned, we've requested from all the departments a status report. The short-term improvements at City Hall, nothing has been done again to this point, and I believe that is primarily due to the discussion about the new City Hall project and the possibilities of doing that. I know in the 2020 budget, there are temporary dollars put in for both the City Hall and the auditorium for heating. And those are in the 2020 requests. And so to move forward on timing of when and if the City Hall project moves forward, the plans to do that. These, I believe, and City Engineer or Public Works Director Christensen can help me with this, but I believe we're to do some minor improvements in the City Hall for various, like carpeting and some of that was decided not to be done because of the discussion on the relocating of the City Hall.
That's correct.
Okay, he's indicating that's correct. The new servers and storage arrays for the IT information, we have got confirmation that those are coming in considerably less, and so we just need to get some final invoices in, and there will be some excess dollars there that will be available to be reallocated. The police department robot has not progressed, and there was I believe a hold put on that, and it had to come back to the council before that was authorized, so that's why that's still showing there. Fire department, we had again at a previous meeting here, the city council reallocated some of those dollars for the vehicle, which we had to replace, and so that discussion, again, I believe was in October, so that's a timing issue as well. The other items as we move forward there, park and rec, the playground equipment is pretty much finalized. And again, we'll be summarizing a lot of these as we get into the month of November to finalize that because of the weather and construction. The bleachers in the Cardinal Arena and the painting, again, is primarily a timing issue on invoices when they come into our department. And the resurfacing of the pool, again, is a timing issue. That work is pretty well completed, but we just have not seen those invoices. Moving into, excuse me, the operating, quick summary, and we should theoretically be at 75%. I'll talk to those items that may be over or maybe under that should be at the 75%. The three major revenue items there, the general property taxes, the intergovernmental, which is primarily our local government aid that comes from the state of Minnesota, and the other financing sources, which are our transfers, intergovernmental transfers from the municipal utilities. You'll notice there that they are all under the 75%. Again, that's due to general property taxes and intergovernmental or the local government aid coming in twice a year. And so we will get that at the end of November, first part of December for the second half of those. So those are right on. The major item that I'd like to talk about there, licenses and permits. Status of our building official was unknown at the time of budgeting for 2019 due to the retirement. But as you can see, the activity is exceeding what we had put in there for the budget, and so we are exceeding anticipated revenues there. So we are slightly below on the total, but we project that we'll be all right on our projected revenues for our general operating. The next page goes into our general government. You'll notice a couple departments there of the planning and city administrator. Those are primarily due to staffing retirements and the process to pay severance until we see if those budgets can handle it, if they replacements are done timely fashion, and those severance payments will need to be transferred out of those operating budgets and are covered by reserves. But until we know that for sure, the departments do cover it. Assessing, that is the total cost that we'll be receiving there because we are contracted with the county. The legal, we have had communications with the city attorney due to the number of large projects that we've encountered, not only this year, but in the recent couple of years. We are looking at reallocating legal costs that are being charged to the operating budget back to the various projects. Examples would be like the curling club. The agreement calls for them to pay for those legal costs. The Y project, the grant that we just heard from Eric Bachman, but we're going to look at all the legal costs and charge those back to local option sales tax projects, those types of things, instead of just the general operating. The other items you see there are really a little under or on target. So the second page there for public safety, again, we should be at 75%. So there's really, the only item I'd like to mention on that one is the transit. That's a one-time contribution for the transit service. Public Works, we've had conversations with the Public Works Director and are watching that. That is somewhat driven by the amount of snow and if we have overtime or that. So we are kind of watching that and are aware that we should be okay there. The next page, again, just like to point out that the non-departmental cultural rec are the civic requests that we receive. You'll see that we are $10,000 short of what was approved, and that's for the bike program. That money just has not been transferred over in that project closed out yet at this point. Otherwise, everything else is pretty much on target, except for the transfers. The transfers are primarily to transfer out of the general operating into the capital improvement, and that is one item that is done near the end of the year too, and that's so that the general operating fund can get a large portion of the interest allocations of the investment portfolio. Waste treatment plant, again, we should be at 75%. You'll notice two large items there. The intergovernmental, they are experiencing a lot more waste coming in from landfills, not only from Candioi County, but other counties as well. And so you'll see a slight projected increase in next year's budget to account for that. And the miscellaneous revenue is our market value adjustments on investments. We have to do that quarterly based on council action. So, and again, the revenues come through the utilities. Investment and cash portfolio, you'll see that the Morgan Stanley Smith Barney group got out of the public investments. And so we worked very closely with Bremer Wealth Management and transferred those investments that were in place at the time over to them, and they are managing that portion of our portfolio. We are also working with Bremer Trust or Bremer Bank and have a money market fund there of about $5 million, which the rate on that is above what a lot of the market is. The auditors had mentioned that a lot of our portfolio was end loaded and really long term. A lot of those were step ups, and we're experiencing those being called with the market and the Fed fund rates being cut again, as we had mentioned to the committee. So we work closely with Bremer Bank and a lot of the brokers here to help us with our investment portfolio. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions or turn it back to Chairman Nelson.
Want to ask him a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
On your last item, the investment and cash balances, you said that a number of our bonds are being called currently. And where are they recommending that money go when they're called in?
They're recommending not to go long-term over 2 to 3 years because the Fed funds are indicating that there may be another 1 or 2 rate cuts before the end of the year even. This kind of was experienced in like 2015, 2016 before the last election. And so in 2020, which will be an election year, we're kind of mirroring what happened in 15 and 16. So 2 to 3 years is what they're recommending, and to see again what the effects on the election would be one of the primary factors.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Wilkins. The next item that we discussed was the mayor's 2020 proposed budget, particularly the items to be reviewed at the full council meetings that are scheduled November 7th and November 21st at this time. The following questions from council members have been addressed to date to be discussed on November 7th. Question number 1, can you show reserve accounts amounts used in the 2020 proposed budget, particular one-time dollars? One-time reserve amounts used are approximately 1.7 million. Of that amount, 840,000 is excess from the prior operating years of 2018, and 870,000 is from the insurance buy-down program, which was terminated earlier this year. This 1.7 million has been used in the 2020 budget for part of the non-departmental expenditures, particular for personnel costs, insurance, et cetera. Question number 2 was, can you identify all new expenditures over 20,000 not included in the 2019 budget, both revenues and expenditures affected by this, whether increasing or decreasing, which have been noted below? And I am not going to read the list. It is significant. I would just ask that you review that to be prepared to have that discussion on November 7th. Question number 3 was, can you identify all 2019 budget expenditures with greater than 20% increases in the 2020 budget? 2019 items with 20% increase or decrease. A brief review highlighted the main points, which many of these items being not material in nature. Further budget discussions should be addressed to the city administrator as needed, and that was just a reminder of council members having questions to submit it to staff to be prepared to make those decisions. Non-funded capital items were briefly discussed, including the lights of the ball field at $315,000. Franchise fees were also discussed. Information about that will be available on November 7th also, and including options of how to structure the fees charged if we were to adopt it. Clarifications will be provided for the Eagle Lake Sewer Lift Station improvements, the short-term improvements at City Hall for $90,000, Police Department search robot for $18,000, ticket automation, insurance reimbursements, personnel planning costs, non-departmental refunds and reimbursements, and the Public Works personnel costs and maintenance of other improvements. Other discussion is needed on the $870,000 for fixed charges, the $147,000 in additional levy, the $245,000 in new franchise fees, the new assistant administrator position, personnel insurances, the PIR, no, I can't say it, funding possibility for the lights at Swanson Field, and the new assistant fire chief and accounting clerk positions, the HR and planning interns, capital improvements, streets, and water rates. The Finance Committee meeting calendar and future agenda items were briefly summarized. And there was no further business to come before the meeting, and we too adjourned at 7:25 and had a good discussion. And if there aren't any questions, I will enter a motion to submit the minutes now.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to file the minutes of the Finance Committee for October 24th. Discussion. Seeing and hearing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, that motion does carry. Next, I will go to Ms. Thompson for a resolution authorizing the city to purchase tax forfeited land.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, as mentioned earlier in the finance minutes, the city had received notice that 3 parcels were going for tax forfeiture sale to the state of Minnesota. The one parcel was determined that it could be beneficial for the city to acquire as it pertains to stormwater management. At the October 21st council meeting, the council took action to approve the city's purchase of the parcel, and we had City Attorney Robert Scott prepare the appropriate documents for this transaction to take place, and those are what are before you to consider. So it's staff's recommendation to approve the purchase of tax forfeited parcel number 959131115.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Has this been reviewed with the chair of the planning commission so that he's aware of it? That we're doing this, that we're dispensing of their review?
Mr. Mayor, that is on their next planning commission agenda. Is that this week, I believe?
Yes, it is, Wednesday.
Okay.
Okay.
So the resolution is, does say plan and dispensing with a review of the purchase by the Willmar Planning Commission. It is included in the resolution.
Correct. This discussion. Roll call.
Councilmember Fagerly.
Aye.
Maskey.
Aye.
Schwantes.
Aye.
Davis.
Aye.
Alvarado.
Aye.
Osmus.
Aye.
Plowman.
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye.
8 ayes, 0 nays.
That resolution passes. Next, we have the Labor Relations Committee report of October 28th. Councilmember Meske.
Yes, the Labor Committee met on October 28th, and all of our regular membership was there. We had no public comment. We dealt with 2 sections. We did not bring one of the employee personnel policies, Section 9 last meeting. That is now coming forward this meeting. You will find in there, I see the color-coded didn't pick up on the sexual harassment as well, or the respectful workplace changes. The rest of them are color-coded. To highlight in that sexual harassment and respectful workplace, most of those are verbatim as they existed before. Probably the biggest change that held this up was including elected officials in that section. I would reference you to page 129 and 125 in your packet where it makes references to elected officials, but it basically conforms that basically all of us elected folks are subjected to the same rules as the rest of the city employees. We did wait because there is some language in the charter that if you're convicted of an act of moral turpitude, that you could forego your position. We did not use that language in the policy, but we do make a reference that you could lose your seat if there's some other circumstances by which you're identified in this respectful workplace to be, well, not where you should be. Other than that, I would ask HR Director Beckman to stand if we have any questions for the part that's not color-coded, or if there are some pieces that we need to highlight there. Because like I said, there, for some reason, the type is not showing up in the colors. It does on the last section of this 9th section, which is job-related injury. That part does show up with the color changes, but the first 2 pieces did not.
I think the only other section that we added was just a reference to human resources throughout that policy, just because the league's language didn't reference HR, because a lot of smaller cities might not have an HR department. So that was the only other thing added to the 9th section, was just reference to reporting to HR, in addition to city administrator or city attorney.
And with that, our committee did would like to move that forward as for your approval this evening. So I guess I'll introduce that motion at this time.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve city employee personnel policy, section number 9. Discussion. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, that motion does carry. Councilmember Meske.
Section 10, basically this is one of these long-standing policy pieces, and really none of these were very, well, they're kind of the moldy oldies of policies that are in most of them. The only thing that we really addressed that would be different were for on-call firefighters that work for the city of Willmar, and that is on page 146. And again, I would ask HR Director Beckman if there's, and then you would want to add on that particular piece. I think it's fairly self-explanatory, but. And if I don't see any, again, we moved as a committee to the approval of this here this evening, so I'll offer that motion to approve the 10th section at this time.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve employee personnel policy, section 10. Discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, that motion does carry. Councilmember Meske.
The next item we talked about was personnel policy 11th section, which has the city driving policy and safety equipment gear policy. That will be coming before you next time, and I am very glad to tell you that that will be the last section of the personnel policy manual. We will have effectively went through the entire piece, and after that, we will have one more time when we're going to try to streamline some of that. We've mentioned it a few times where there is long-standing state policy that we could just reference that. We'll still have it digitally, but there'll be links back to the state statutes and stuff that cite these, so maybe it's not such a long document for employees to take a look at. The next, I think that's actually, yeah. That is where our committee work is done. And so at this time, I'll make a motion that we file the minutes.
Did you want to talk about the city administrator?
I do. I thought I'd throw it in after them because it wasn't really part of the amendments, but it's your call.
Certainly, yeah. Motion made and is there a second to file the minutes? Motion made and second to file the minutes as presented. Discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, that motion does carry. Councilmember Meske.
The next item is not, it wasn't part of our meeting, but it's a timely process. We are fastly approaching the next phases in our search for a new city administrator, so I thought that it would be good to give everybody an update. I know you should have received an email a couple weeks ago about it. You would have received the same email again this evening to remind you of the calendar of events that's happening, but I asked if HR Beckman would describe kind of where we are in that process, because we're getting some significant events that are starting to come as soon as next week.
Absolutely. So we are still currently in the advertising and recruitment phase, like Councilmember Meske had mentioned. That is scheduled to end on or around November 11th, and that will kick off an applicant review stage where they'll screen out, Baker Tilly will screen the applicants, administer supplemental questionnaire, and also complete the video interviews. And that's scheduled to happen from November 11th through the 25th. Then that will lead to the semifinalist report, where Baker Tilly provides the semifinalist report compiled by Baker Tilly, review their materials, including that recorded video interview, and that's currently scheduled to happen the week of December 2nd. And assuming everything goes according to their laid out schedule, this would end with an employment offer in end of January, early February. And I did email out the full timeline, so you have it in full again this afternoon, or excuse me, this evening. So you should have that now too. And I did speak with Baker Tilly briefly last week, where they just gave me an update on the advertising that they're doing. And I believe she will be reaching out to individual council members end of this week, early next week, to set up a time to meet with you or speak with you also and give you an update on the recruitment.
Thank you.
I have a couple questions. There was a conversation about that the council was going to have some type of testing done that was going to be used in the evaluation process. Is that still in process, or has that been removed, or?
I can look at the testing. Was there more specific testing that you were looking at conducting, or what? I'm not sure I know what you mean.
She's the one that brought it up to me.
Oh, okay.
She said that, that there was going to be, each of the council members and the mayor were going to be given an evaluation as far as our administrative styles and those types of things, and then they were going to use that. What, has that been done yet, or is it not going to be done?
I can reach out to her tomorrow and find out. She hasn't mentioned anything to me about sending it out, so I can definitely reach out to her and see what her plans are for that.
I don't know, in the piece here, under the applicant review, I don't know if review supplemental questionnaires is part of that process or not. I'm not sure what that.
Yeah. In the past, I was involved in it, and I haven't been involved in any of this process, as I think everybody knows, so. The other thing that on this particular piece is that when we get down to that final selection process, is that going to be the labor committee that's going to do that before they select the final people? Or in the past, there was a group that was put together by the council? Or is that going to be done differently now this time, or?
I can certainly
The
ask.
last 2 times it was done that way.
I can certainly ask if she'd like to do it differently, but if throughout the whole timeline she references the city council in full. So I believe that's the intention, but I can clarify that with her.
Okay, sounds good. It's nice to have the update. Also, I noticed that today it's not on our city website that there's an opening for a city administrator. And I called and talked to Janelle about that today. And again, in the past, I've been involved in these things, so I check these things to make sure they're done, but that hasn't been happening this time around. So, I mean, I think it's pretty important that if we're hiring a city administrator, that's on our website, that we're going to hire a city administrator. I mean,
Yep,
that'd be important.
Yeah, I spoke with Janelle this morning too. She brought it up. So we're working with Dave to see if we can find somewhere on the website to put it, because we can't post it in our regular job opening area, because then they would apply directly with us rather than through Baker Tilly. So we're trying to find a special place that we can put that on the website somewhere. So yeah, we started working on that today.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for the update. I don't know if anybody else has questions or not. Councilmember Alvarado.
Would it be something where we have to do a link to refer them to Baker Tilly? I don't know if there's a contract, or, notify that we need a city administrator, obviously, but then link them back to Baker Tilly?
Yep. Yes, we have a link to the Baker Tilly site where they would apply. And so we're looking to embed that somewhere on our website and finding the most appropriate place that would be. So yes.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Councilman Maskey.
I mean, we haven't ever had Baker Tilly hired, correct? Maybe it's new with this particular person. I know we had them with Charlene Stevens' search, but maybe, as they start that process of going through applicants, maybe it would be nice if she touched base with the whole council on what those next steps will be and what they intend to provide. So if we see some holes, that we could perhaps help fill them. It might be a good time to check back with the whole council about what the next steps. I know we have the calendar, but if there are some questions or concerns, I'm sure that she'd probably be very happy to show up and let us know kind of what the next steps would be. Maybe that would be very helpful.
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay. Additional comments? Okay. Thank you for the update. Appreciate that. Next is consideration of union memorandums of agreement regarding wages, health insurance for 2020. Ms. Beckman.
Okay, we have an adjustment for wages and health insurance for the plan year 2020. Starting in this year, 2019, our supervisor unit and unrepresented employees moved to the Public Employees Insurance Program, or PEAP Health Insurance, while we had 3 unions remaining on the Blue Cross Blue Shield plan. In 2020, we have a projected increase of 32% to our premiums on the Blue Cross Blue Shield plan and also an increasing deductible. So with the very rapidly increasing health insurance costs, the city did request that our union employees consider switching to the PEEP health insurance plan for 2020. So those three unions, the general unit, public works, and law enforcement unit employees have all met and voted to switch over to the public employees insurance program starting in 2020 with an adjustment to their wages and wage scales. I do have the signed general unit contract in your packets. I did have that before the deadline. And then I passed out hard copies of the LALS signed contract. Public Works, they haven't given me a signed copy yet, but this is the language they have voted on and approved. I'm hoping to have the signed MOA by the end of this week. So the financial impact is all of the represented and unrepresented employees would receive an 8% increase to their wages in addition to the COLA. And this means that the city will also save then $3,000 annually for every employee who was enrolled in a single plan from the switch from Blue Cross to PEEP. And then they'll actually save $9,834 annually for every employee who had been enrolled in family coverage on the Blue Cross plan by switching over to the Public Employees Insurance Program. Okay.
And so at this time, you're looking for a motion to approve these agreements?
Correct, yes.
I would enthusiastically move to approve these contract changes.
Second.
So we have a motion that's been made and seconded. Councilmember Meske, it appears to me you'd like to make some additional comments. Are you?
Well, no, I'm very pleased with that. Many of these conversations have been happening in closed session, so I'll be careful not to say anything I should not say. However, this is very good news. I applaud the efforts of our city administrator and our HR director for getting this work done. This exceeded my expectations, and I am very, very pleased with where this is. I think it positions the city in a very good position, and I think the relationships with our employees are vastly improved with this, and I think it bodes very well for the future, and I just am elated that this has happened.
Additional comments or questions? As the mayor, I too want to commend our employees for really stepping up to the plate. Without the leadership of our city administrator and our HR director, this wouldn't have been possible, and really thanks to them. But also, I also want to recognize the other department directors because they work side by side with these people on a daily basis. And, so they're asking for that input. And the leadership team that we've assembled is a team that is working in a positive direction, understanding the direction that council has put out there. So, this looks very good and very favorable. I certainly did not feel we would be in this position tonight. So kudos. And I talked with Mr. Gramitz last week when he was getting close to having agreements and told him I thought that was very favorable. So with that, will any of the council members have comments or questions at this time? Otherwise, we'll go to the vote. Councilmember Nelson.
Just a clarification, there's no subject to because we don't have a signed copy on the one? We're okay to approve it without signatures?
That is the language that was provided to them and the language that they voted on. So there will be no change to the content of the MOA. It will just have signed signatures at the bottom.
Good point. I guess the only question I have for the city administrator, or maybe for the HR director, is this time sensitive for the mayor's signature? I guess the only reason I'm asking that is if it is, I would ask that the council consider having the mayor pro tem sign in my position.
I think that would be appropriate. I think putting this to rest is in the city's and the union's best interest, so the sooner it's signed, the better.
Okay. So if it's okay with the council, I will sign the ones that have signatures on them. The one that doesn't have a signature on it yet, if I'm not able to sign that, I'll have the mayor pro tem sign that, if that's okay with the council.
Absolutely.
Okay with that? Okay. Roll call.
Councilmember Meske,
Aye.
Schwantes.
Aye.
Davis.
Aye.
Alvarado.
Aye.
Osmus.
I'll abstain.
Plowman.
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye.
Fagerly.
Aye.
7 ayes, 0 nays, and 1 abstain.
That motion passes. Again, Ms. Beckman, thank you for your leadership. I know that you have spent countless hours and sleepless nights over this, so thank you for your leadership in making that happen. Next is consideration of a 150-year celebration for the city of Willmar. It was brought to my attention, and I believe actually it was brought to my attention, I think, around the first of the year, if I remember correctly, by Councilmember Meske, that would be 150 years for the city of Willmar next year. And it was brought to my attention last week, and so I asked this to be brought up as an agenda item for this evening, because I think that 150 years for a community is a very good thing, and I would certainly like to see us have a nice celebration. There are a number of different things that we could do. I have some ideas on what we could do, but I also would fully support council members that may want to be involved in that, and maybe we can set up a mayor's 150-year celebration committee, if you will, a group of people that we get together like-minded to put ideas together and then kind of put those things out. We're not going to be able to have anything for January 1st probably, but we have a lot of exciting things that happen throughout the whole year. We have to Celebrate the Light of the World. We've got our Willmar Fest activities. We've got Celebrate Art, Celebrate Coffee. We have the artist hops, and we can go on and on and on about different things. But I would just like us as a council to have some discussion. If we want to have it at one of the mini retreats, we could do that. Or if you're all in favor of doing that, and we just kind of try to put this together and bring that back to you guys so that you have it for your review, however you want to do it. I just want to put it out there that I would like to see us do something to celebrate our 150 years in Willmar. And I know that a number of you are interested in these types of things, along with myself, but I think that there are community members that would also like to be involved and be at the table. And so I think that's why I wanted to bring it up. I talked to Mr. Gramitz about it. There's not really a state statute that allows us to spend city dollars on just a party. So we can't just do a party unless we do fundraising. But there are things that we can do to commemorate and to actually put into record the fact that we had 150 years. And so there are some funds that we could use for that. I talked with former Mayor Heitke, who was the mayor at year 125. And at that time, the city had spent some money and put some pins together. So a lot of us have had the Willmar pin. So maybe we could develop a new 150-year pin. We maybe could just do some things that way. So those are some of my thoughts. I just wanted to bring to the council and see what the council's wishes or what you guys thought about it would be. So, Councilmember Meske.
I think you should just use your authority to put together a mayor's committee and let's move it forward. I think you were looking for an informal support. I think that's exactly what should happen. I think it's very valuable, and I think it's a great idea.
Okay. Additional discussions about that? Councilmember Alvarado.
Yeah, we should celebrate, didn't we have a speaker recently talk about celebrating our victories and this sort of thing? We've had a lot of great leaders that go before us. It's a very exciting time. I think, pull together people interested in celebrating Willmar. There's a lot of people that love Willmar, so it's a great idea.
Additional discussion. Councilman Nelson.
I think the Historical Society has a lot of great things that they've got put together that represent our history, and might be kind of fun to see just the input from them also on the history.
Okay. Additional comments? Okay, so I will try to, within the next 2 weeks, put something together, just a brief outline to bring back to you guys for consideration, and then see where we go from there. So with that, we'll go to council member announcements. I'll start with Councilmember Meske.
There was a lot of great things that happened here tonight, so I'm just I'm still taken back. So kudos to all of our city staff for doing wonderful work. Otherwise, I will pass.
Councilmember Schwantes.
Thank you. I believe it's also Willmar Fest's 75th anniversary this coming year, so it'll be double celebrations, and there might be some ways to celebrate together. Also, just want to note that we're doing the City Hall tour for 2 communities on this Wednesday, November 6th. So for those task force members, we look forward to having you join us, and if other council members are able to, wonderful.
And I will have to not attend that. I will not be in attendance at that. So, Councilmember Davis.
Nothing tonight.
Councilmember Alvarado.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. When we built the playground, one of the things that I heard was, I wish we could be doing this, another project that we could bring people together. And I think we have that project in the Celebrate Lights. Recently, there were some volunteers that came out this past weekend, put up a number of trees. This is an opportunity to get out there, help the community, put up the lights. You're going to be able to say, hey, I put up that tree there, or I did that, or I did that. So if you show up like on Saturday around 9 o'clock, I'm sure they're going to have a job for you. Sunday afternoon, they're going to have a job for you. It's going to be an exciting presentation of lights. This is, it's state of the art. And we get out there, volunteer. They're busy too. They're family men, they're working men and women. So seek them out. Seek them out. Show up, help them out. So I'm very excited about being part of that. So seek them out, show up, and good things are going to happen out at Robbins Island this winter. Thank you.
Councilmember Adams.
I don't have anything.
Councilmember Plowman.
Nothing tonight, thank you.
Councilmember Nelson.
Nothing tonight.
Okay, then we have announcement of council committee meeting dates. Finance.
Finance will be meeting on Thursday, November 7th. It is noticed and the agenda is out. You did get an email today regarding it too, that it's a Finance Committee full council meeting at 5:15 on Thursday, November 7th in Conference Room 1 at the City Office Building.
Okay, thank you for that notice, and I do not believe I'll be in attendance. If I am able, I will be there. Labor?
Due to the observation of Veterans Day on next Monday, we will not be attending. We won't have a Labor Committee on Monday, sorry. We'll be having it on Tuesday, November 12th at 6:15.
Public Works, Public Safety.
We will meet, excuse me, we'll meet this Wednesday, the 6th at 5:15 City Hall.
And the Community Development.
We're meeting on Tuesday at 5:15 because of Veterans Day. Make sure you go to the display at the auditorium again, too.
I didn't get to you, did I?
That's okay.
I missed you. Sorry about that. Councilmember Nelson, or Councilmember Fagley, did you have anything for council member announcements?
No, not at this time.
I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion been made and seconded. We are adjourned.
Let's sign the document.
Oh, yes, go sign something.
Just a reminder to all the council and mayor to please stop over to sign for the tax forfeited lots.
Oh, boy. Still got it in there. Good job.
I was going to bring it.
Not official to the table.